A very good evening to everyone who's joining us live online. Welcome to the Meditation for Inner Peace and Happiness Experience Sri Lanka. We will wait a few more minutes for everyone to join the webinar and then we will start the session. Ayubowan and a very good evening to everyone who's joining us live right now. I welcome you all to the Meditation for Inner Peace and Happiness Experience Sri Lanka, organized by Akin Spence Travels, Sri Lanka's leading destination management company. My name is Ashin Sanivir Singha and I am the moderator for this webinar. To give you a brief introduction about Akin Spence Travels, Akin Spence Travels is a joint venture between Akin Spence PLC, a Sri Lankan blue chip conglomerate diversified into many sectors with emphasis on leisure, tourism, and Touristic Union International Group, the world's largest integrated tourism company headquartered in Hanover, Germany. They've been in business for more than 4 decades and commands market leadership position for many years. Akin Spence Travels has won many awards and accolades, and it is the largest recognition. The latest recognition award was winning the coveted National Tourism Award 2018 for the Best Inbound Tour Operator Large category conferred by the Sri Lanka Tourism Authority. Akin Spence Travel is fully diversified into every aspect of tourism activities for inbound tourism, namely leisure, eco, adventure, wildlife, beach, excursions, sports tours, MICE, wellness, show excursions, and luxury tours. Along with that, let me bring you to today's program. We know the world around us has changed since the beginning of 2020 due to the COVID-19 global pandemic situation. During this time, all commercial and leisure travel has come to a complete standstill. In order to keep the momentum and the link between the agents, tour operators, and their staff, Akin Spence Travels organized its first webinar on the title Sri Lanka and the Wildlife Wonder of Asia. Today, here we are at the second webinar on the title Inner Peace and Happiness Through Meditation Experience Sri Lanka. Why we're really conducting this webinar today on Inner Peace and Happiness Through Meditation Experience Sri Lanka is due to the COVID-19 pandemic, significant changes can be expected in the field of travel and tourism due to the change of expectations and needs of the future travelers. The key concern would be determined around health and safety factors. Further, it is also expected that concepts and products based on wellness and well-being will also be a key concern in the future travel experiences. And as the demand for authentic and traditional health and well-being centered tourism products rise, we believe Sri Lanka can be a hotspot for wellness and spiritual centered tourism products. Meditation is such an experience that we can introduce to tourists who are looking for wellness and spiritual focused experiences. That is exactly why we're hosting this webinar today on Inner Peace and Happiness Through Meditation Experience Sri Lanka. With that introduction, let me now introduce you the panel of 3 eminent personalities who we have today to conduct this session. First of all, let me introduce Mr. Deepa Surarachi. He is a management consultant, a trainer, author, a speaker, and an accredited master coach and a mentor. Hello, Mr. Deepa Surarachi. A very good evening, and I welcome you to the webinar today.
Hi, Bowen, and nice to be here with you.
I want to you as well. And I would like to introduce Dr. Vipula Vanigasekara. He is the former Director General of SLTDA and CEO of Convention Bureau. He's also the former diplomat and spiritual teacher on meditation. Dr. Vipula Vanigasekara, Ayubowan to you and welcome to today's session.
Ayubowan, and it's quite very nice to be with you today.
The pleasure is all mine as well, Doctor. And on a final note, let me introduce the third and the final panelist today, Mr. Kushil Gunasekara. He is the founder and chief trustee of Foundation of Goodness. A very good evening and Ayubowan to Mr. Kushil Gunasekara.
Hi, Bowen, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us as well. A very warm welcome to three of the panelists, and it's all the pleasure is all mine to conduct this session today on behalf of Vacant Spence Travels. With that, without further ado, I would now like to move into the first segment of today's session, which is on the title The Corporate World and Meditation. In this segment, we will be talking about what is meditation, how we are going to define it, and why do we really need meditation. To talk about this, let me invite Mr. Deepal Surya Rachi. And before I get him on board, let me give you a brief introduction of who he is. He is a corporate personality who has been integrating mindfulness over 40 years and authored Inward Bound for Mindful Living, published in the UK and Sri Lanka. He has over 30 years of experience in sales, marketing, human resource management, advertising, and general management, and over 10 years he has been at the board level. He has authored over 15 books in English and Sinhala covering business to Buddhism, including Inward Bound and Living Together. Pioneered disseminating management concepts in Sinhala through Sinhalan Business book series. He is also a member of the alumni of National University of Singapore, Asian Institute of Management, Stanford Business School, USA. He has done over 1,000 training programs, lectures, motivational speeches in 12 countries across 5 continents. Let me now invite this eminent personality, Mr. Deepal Surya Rachi. The platform is to you, sir.
Okay, thank you once again. And the first point that I would like to bring up is what meditation is and why it is in the corporate world. When you say meditation, it covers a very broad spectrum of topics. It can be from reflecting to thinking to concentration. But what we are trying to focus today is how we can work with our mind, the process of feeling, knowing, thinking, perceiving, and through that be more effective in what we are doing and find some inner calm and peace in the process. So to illustrate this, let me share with you a true story that happened. A friend of mine, just around the time of COVID started in Sri Lanka, he one night woke up in the middle of the night feeling a little itchy throat. He couldn't swallow, and he checked his temperature with his back of his palm. He felt a little warm, and he thought he has got corona, and that was enough. So he started imagining everything possible, from having to leave his family and going to the hospital and being there alone and going through everything, including death. And this horror kept on repeating in his mind for the next few days, and he was asleep. So this ability of building horror stories is one aspect of our mind, which is very much we experience in the corporate life. Now, it's the same ability to create these movies that we can even create beautiful movies if you want. Same things, imagination of possibilities. All you need is a simple trigger. And the first thing we discussed is fear. And fear actually arises from a thought. If you have ever experienced a dog chasing you, you're frightened not because of the dog. You're frightened of the thought that it might attack you, it might bite you. Now, once we experience something like that, we cannot get out of it. But for animals, it's a different thing. You have seen on wildlife movies and sometimes real, maybe a deer is grazing and a tiger is coming to attack it. And if the tiger doesn't succeed, the fellow realizes there's no danger, it goes back to eating. Now we can't do that. We keep on thinking, what will happen? Will that tiger come again? You know? So this whole process of thinking again and again, you know, which we call rumination, exacerbates that fear. Now, why I brought this is, in the corporate world, right? They say we still have a part of our old brain. And when we have challenges are situations where the resources are not enough for us to meet. Then we keep on thinking all the possibilities using our ability to create pictures and keep thinking over and over the negative situations. And this is what engulfs us and we call it stress. This is a major problem in corporate life. So if you can break this cycle, that's all you need to do. If you're carrying a heavy weight, what do? You just drop it for a while. And if you can learn to drop this fearful movie that you have created and realize that, oh, I'm the director of the movie, so that you can get out of the audience hall and then understand I'm the one who is creating. So this ability is like a safety sensor of a machine. So you need two things. One, to know that I am creating my own horror movie, and secondly, to stop and let go for a short while at least. Now, this is something that if you can develop, it's a skill. This famous incident of these students who got entrapped in this cave in Thailand, you know that when they went to rescue them, they were all smiling and they were not stressed. Why? Because they were practicing this simple practice called mindfulness meditation through his teacher. So that's what I want to suggest, that we try to link. This is possible because at any given moment, although how much we think we are multitasking, what we are doing is at one thought at a time. So if you become, let's say, angry, and if you become aware that I am angry, then you are a different person. Not the person who is angry, but the person who is aware that I was angry and I am angry. So if you can bring your mind to what's happening right now and observe without getting involved, then you can have a right perspective. This is what I found in my practice, and linking it to the corporate world to try mindfulness in this. Then what happens is, it's a skill, right? You keep practicing, you improve on it. Probably we have some time later to try and see, or even Vipula might give us a guided session. And although this is coming from Buddhism, there has been a lot of scientific research done to find the benefit of mindfulness meditation. And if you keep practicing. So in the next 2 minutes, let me give you a small guide on how to come to the present moment. Wherever you are, just relax, close your minds for a short while. Try to listen to the sounds that are around you. Notice the sensations of your body. If you are sitting, how you are seated. Where do you feel the sensations? Where do you feel the body weight? Do you feel hot, cold? And see what thoughts come to your mind. And see whether you are breathing. Do you feel that you are breathing? Don't interrupt, just watch the breath for a few seconds. Some breaths are short, some are long, some are deep, some are shallow. This is the only thing that happens right now. So this is a simple practice. You keep practicing. What you do is you will be able to let go what is not necessary right now, and you become aware of what goes on. And more importantly, you begin to notice your intentions. So this process will help you discover yourself more through greater insights. And this is like a new mind operating system. So that is the benefit of meditation, and that's how you will find that this skill will help you in the corporate world to navigate the challenges that we face. I thought that's a quick introduction to the kind of topic that we are going to discover today. Ashi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Deepal, for conducting such a valuable session along with a guided session. And why we had you first. Let me tell the audience why we had Mr. Deepal Suraj coming in first at this webinar is exactly why he shared, like in the eyes of a corporate personality, he shared his experience of corporate experience over years and why meditation is important, what is meditation is what was covered during his session. And learning what I got from his session is realizing the stress is that we are creating our own horror movie. And the moment we decide to stop and be the creator of our own movie, that's when we realize the wellness, well-being of a person as an individual. So thank you so much, Mr. Deepa Surarachi, for conducting that
Pleasure.
valuable
Pleasure.
session. And we will get back to you at the end for the Q&A session. Along with that, let's move into the second segment of today's webinar, which is titled on meditation through an inward journey. If you can remember, at the start I mentioned that meditation is such an experience that we can introduce to tourists who are looking for wellness and spiritually focused experiences. And in this session, this is exactly what we're going to talk about. How can meditation be a tourism product? And to conduct this session, let me invite Dr. Vipula Vanigasekara. Before he comes on the platform, let me give you a brief introduction of who he is. Dr. Vipula Vanigasekara has served the private sector Sri Lanka Tourist Board as Director Marketing and the Diplomatic Service of Sri Lanka in Malaysia as Councillor and Head of the Mission in Norway. Sri Lanka Convention Bureau as CEO, Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority as Director General, and prior to becoming a university senior lecturer since 2016. Vipula's spiritual studies continued for decades in Sri Lanka and overseas. He is the author of a book titled Pointers to Enlightenment that paved him the way to conduct spiritual sessions for tourists visiting Sri Lanka and Australia. His message revolves around discovering freedom within through an inward journey for which language could offer only examples and pointers. Along with that introduction, let me now invite Dr. Vipula Vanigasekara to conduct a session on meditation through an inward journey. Dr. Vipula?
Thank you, Ashi, for that introduction. And ladies and gentlemen, let me use a few slides which will make my short speech a little explicit. If you can see this slide, just a moment. All right, so I presume you can see this. So this is how I introduce the title of my meditation, because at some point in our life journey, many people enter spiritual practice for some reason or other. In my research over many decades, from comparative religion, philosophies to modern spirituality, it revealed two ways in which a spiritual search can begin. One is to observe the nature and surrounding and see the rationale of subject-object reality. And the other is turning attention to oneself to understand how thoughts, feelings, and emotions arise within. So I opted to the latter, hence the term inward journey. Now, to share with you the status of spiritual tourism according to UNWTO, prior to COVID, of course, around 300 million travel every year to a destination for a reason connected to spirituality in a broader sense. But this number included the pilgrim travel as well as travel to places of religious significance. Then the recent non-duality studies have shown out of these 300 million, at least 35 million travel to various destinations and locations per year for retreats and practice yoga and meditation. They appear to be looking for inner peace and happiness, and most of them are called truth seekers. You can see the locations where retreats are conducted abroad and in Sri Lanka. You may also notice from these pictures below, unlike in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s, the notion that meditation needs to be practiced in special dedicated ashrams has somewhat diminished. In the West, these sessions are now called meetings. And in Sri Lanka, I started a project in hotels, as all you need is a comfortable seating and a quiet place. There are many types of meditation techniques, and all of them are said to be beneficial to practitioners. Meditation on mindfulness, for instance, is popular in Western countries, where they practice in schools, hospitals, and even police stations. So meditation is, I think, as Deepal mentioned, it's all about concentration or observation or even reciting mantras. Generally, there are two categories of spiritual seekers. The ones who are looking for remedy from mundane or day-to-day suffering, we normally call stress, anxiety, worry, anger, depression, etc., etc. But there is another segment which is ever growing across the world, and they are seeking spiritual freedom like enlightenment, liberation, or awakening. This segment comes from these 35 million travelers that I mentioned earlier. Sri Lanka is predominantly a Buddhist country, as you know, and Buddhist philosophy offers two types of meditation, namely samatha or still meditation and vipassana or insight meditation. Anapanasati or meditation on breath, as well as meditation on metta or loving kindness, are the most popular meditation technique. A skillful teacher will offer the right discourse and meditation to the members of the audience. What I do is a combination of these two, starting off with still meditation and then gradually moving on to more insights through a guided meditation. It's a 1-hour program conducted in English, consisting of a discourse, the meditation or the guided meditation, followed by question and answers. In the last 6 years, because I entered this spiritual work after I launched the book, The Pointers to Enlightenment, in 2014, I have conducted over 500 sessions in Sri Lanka and also some sessions in Germany and Australia during my travel. Not to mention the fact that I am currently full-time engaged as a lecturer for Edith Cowan University. So this number shows the growing interest for spiritual seekers among the tourists. Now, with regard to the messages that we are trying to communicate, this is what you see on paper in many religious or spiritual literature, if you summarize what the spiritual leaders are advocating. For those who need to come out of stress, anxiety, and worries, they are offered various practices taken through these themes in the meditation. For the other group, the second group, who look for meaning and purpose of life, I touch on vipassana, or what we call supramundane teachings, through meditation. This is on the premise or the saying that is attributed to Buddha himself, that is, the teacher will appear when the student is ready, meaning that language is too mundane to describe the true nature of existence, hence the use of many pointers and examples. An inward journey is perhaps one description of a way to a discovery, breaking the fence in which the humans have virtually become slaves to their minds. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's my part of presentation today, and you can get the answers during the question time. Thank you, and over to you, Ashi.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vipula, for that value-adding session. And we will come back to you again during the Q&A session. And I think just like you mentioned, Sri Lanka, we all know that Sri Lanka is a country rich with nature and Buddhism, from where the meditation came up. And like Dr. Vipula mentioned, tourists come down to Sri Lanka for retreats, for mindfulness activities, and so many of such well-being, health and well-being activities. So this is exactly why we're having this webinar today, to tell you the importance of meditation and how we can combine the meditation and traveling for the future travelers for a better experience. Thank you so much again, Dr. Vipula, for conducting that session. And along with that, now I would like to move into our the third and the final session of today's webinar, which is on life, spirituality and inner peace. In this session, we will be talking about what it means to know yourself, what it means to recognize inner peace. This is what we're going to talk about. And to talk about this, let me now invite Mr. Kushal Gunasekara. Before he comes on the platform, let me introduce him. Kushal Gunasekara is a dedicated humanitarian committed to making productive and educational programs available to rural children, youth, and women in an effort to bridge the gap between the rural and urban sectors. He established a foundation of goodness in 1999 in his hometown, Senigama. The foundation of goodness had a turnaround with the impact of tsunami in 2004 that wiped off the Senigama village, and today FOG is the center of life and productivity for its villagers. His most recent initiative, the Good Life Institute, is another product from his wish to impart a value-based learning system into the lives of people. Kushal was the recipient of the first ever Commonwealth Points of Light Award for Sri Lanka, presented by Her Majesty the Queen of England. With that introduction, Mr. Kushal Gunasekara, the platform is yours to conduct the session on life, spirituality and inner peace.
Thank you, Ashi. Also, my fellow panelists, Deepal and Vipula, I understood a lot of things about the mindfulness and stress relief busters that you have both spoken on. But my presentation will be slightly different. It's based on some of the highlights of my own career that I have learned, how to have clarity of mind. For example, the buzzword everywhere is mindfulness, but I'm trying a different technique called the mind makeup. It's like a bit like the beauty makeup. So today, when I talk about life, the COVID-19 is a very hot topic, and everyone realized that life is very different to what they thought. I personally think the toxic released by mankind to the universe harmfully disturbed its balance. So there are some key highlights that I'm going to leave with the audience for their own reflection and meditative ways into the future. COVID-19 being an eye-opener, I've always thought of being human and being humane are two different things. You're born as a human and you end up being humane, so you have to bridge the gap in this long journey and eventually become a happier person only by being humane. Human spirit should be your guide, and the humane qualities should be actually your light. So if you take birth and death, for example, the day we are born, is the day we get our death sentence. We don't know how and when. So we've got to live our life joyfully, living in the present, enjoying the moment, every day. We probably have under 1,000 months to live. If everyone is able to calculate the number of months they have left, they would do everything possible to become, better human beings than they were before. So impermanence is one key factor in life. You have to know that everything is uncertain and subject to change. So if you know that ahead, you can manage a lot of your disappointments. That's very, very important to reflect and meditate upon impermanence. Living this life is like a treacherous, you traveling on a treacherous road where in order to avoid the pitfalls, you have to be very, very mindful, or you have to make up your mind to exactly see where you're heading. Otherwise, you'll end up in disaster. Um, what you put into the world is what you get back in return. And that is the key. I mean, that's what happened with the COVID-19, because people really didn't understand the toxic content that they were releasing. So mind makeup is very, very important, because it could have been far worse than it can be. Because a lot of people, when something happens, they say, why is it only happening to me? But they have to realize that it could have been far worse. Probably more than 100 million people are in worse troubles. So, and I think putting out into the life of the universe, if you have a kind attitude, if you got integrity, a great approach, integrity and discipline, with kindness and good attitude, key attributes that can actually help you win back some of this which are stored in the universe, and will give it to you at the time when it's needed. So going into spirituality, I've always realized that heart and mind is your spiritual platform. And the self-assessment is very important. This is what I talked about, the beauty makeup and the mind makeup. People cleanse our bodies so many times daily, and getting rid of, the dirt and the dust that have gathered over a period of time, or for the day, or what have you. But no one sits down, in silence and think what has been put into your heart and mind, the defilements, the ego, the jealousy, the envy, greed, hatred, everything goes in there. So you just sit in silence and take them out one by one. Otherwise, it piles up, then your life becomes miserable. Of course, it's not the enemy that is outside. It is the enemy that is within you that you have to deal with. So you have to sit down, prepare yourself on a daily basis to become better than you used to be. It's also about non-harm and non-hurt. To lead a good life of wholesome action, you have to have that good quality of non-harm and non-hurt. So the other one key factor on spirituality that I want to emphasize on is the praise or blame. Pleasure or pain, victory or defeat, gain or loss is going to get you at some point in time. And if you know this ahead, you can manage your disappointments and expectations. But a lot of people don't know that these 8 are going to get to you. So if you know that ahead, then you certainly will be less disappointed. 3 things I follow very closely is speaking the truth, not yielding to anger, giving even if you have only little to give. And these are the kind of wholesome action that one can follow up for a very enriching life. And meditation, I have learned, is not to get things, but to get rid of things. So these are some of the key points that I've actually going to leave with the audience. And inner peace we were talking about, and to achieve inner peace, you must have no expectation. Peace begins when there is no expectation. Forgiveness is another. There is no time how much you can forgive. but there's one more time. And then letting go, that both Deepal and Vipula spoke of, is a very, very important attribute to have. Letting go of, the more simple it is, less you have, greater the peace. So you must also know that good times and bad times don't last forever. They have an expiry date. So if you know that ahead, that good times and bad times are going to be only there for a certain time, you've got to watch that and let it go. And praying, a lot of people pray for peace. Praying for peace is not at all the solution, but acting for peace, then it becomes achievable. In a negative situation, you have to train your mind to look at positively. If you are always dwelling on negativity, then you can't train your mind to look at positive, because there's adversity brings many blessings, and you can't only see the door that is closed, but there are doors that gets open when adversity comes. So you've got to be very, very watchful, observing, and careful in how you make that future inroads into where you want to go. Peace also arises when you know the true nature of things as they really are. Everything is subject to arising and passing away. So if you are able to comprehend that meditatively, then you can deal with all the stress, because you take the stress. If you don't know that these things arise and pass away, watch the process. Like, they're talking about mindfulness. And, there are so much that we can actually talk about in terms of these topics, but time is of essence. And this is why actually, Ashi, you spoke about the Foundation of Goodness, the latest innovation of the Good Life Institute, because it's important to inculcate good values rather than only education. Education and values have to go together. Education can make you wealthy, but values can make you happier. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kushil, for that informative and a value-adding session. I think you spoke to the hearts of the audience today, where you gave out so many take-home messages. To highlight a few, you mentioned how COVID-19 turned around the balance of life of everybody with this pandemic situation. And you gave out the message of bridge the gap to become a happier person, being human and humane. And you also spoke about, just like the beauty makeup, take the mind makeup. That was a value-adding take-home message I'm also taking home today. And you said, speaking the truth, not letting anger take your way, give even if you have very little to give, are three things that you also believe. And I think those three things, as humans, we also believe in taking those three things of speaking the truth, not letting the anger take your way, give even if you have very little to give. And other than those, you also cover the peace begins when you least expect. We keep on saying this, but it's high time to act on this, I guess, along with this session today. And less you have, the greater the peace is. Don't pray for peace, act for peace. These are some of the key messages coming out from Mr. Kushil today. Thank you so much for that value-adding session, Kushil. And along with that, let me remind all of you who are watching us live right now, you can send us your questions right away. You can inbox your questions so that I can take over the questions for each one of these panelists. While you send us questions, let me come into the questions we already have got from some of the members in the audience. The first question, I would like to have Mr. Deepal on board. The word meditation has different connotations and evokes different images. The most common is being a person seated in a cross-legged position with closed eyes and palms together still. This is far away from the image of a busy corporate executive. You are more a latter who is on many boards, a management consultant and a coach. How do you define meditate? No, you define meditation in such a way, but let us take through with your experience in the corporate sector for many years. How can a corporate executive come into this spiritual path?
Yes, thanks. Thanks for that question. And I think Kushil, in a way, answered that question. Uh, because when we try to see life as separate segments, oh, I have my personal life, corporate life, social life, family life, the moment you live in this segmented way, there are definitely going to be conflicts. And secondly, today, it is proven beyond doubt that if you want to be successful in corporate life, you need to be very good in relationships and managing yourself. Now, to manage yourself, you need to know what you're managing, what's going on. And with practices like whatever the form of meditation that you do, it helps you to become aware of yourself, your inner motives. Why am I doing this? You know, and then, as Kushil mentioned, that space, the me time that we talk today, to know what's happening within you. Now, when you take some of these things, that gives you that inner strength. It's just like you go to the gym and work with your muscles so that you can make use of them. You can bend, twist, and things like that. Similarly, when your mind is very well trained to become aware, to let go, to look at things not getting involved, well, these are critical capabilities if you want to be successful in corporate life. And this whole thing about being able to let go is a very, very important skill, right? And whether you want to move up or whether you want to be successful, as Kushil said, you know, you learn to let go. I think some of these things will really help anybody who has been trying, and I could vouch for myself. And if you ask me one single thing that helped me ride the corporate level, that was the practice of mindfulness from 1980s. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Deepal. And I think regarding individual who's starting to meditate, I shall come back to you with the focus of an individual later. But next, let me move to Dr. Vipula Vandasekara. We have a question.
Yeah.
Like you were referring to a segment of spiritual seekers or truth seekers, and you said the language fails to describe, and therefore you use pointers. Can you use one such pointer?
Yes, now, for instance, language is fairly straightforward when it comes to mundane teachings, or in Buddhism we call them Laukika. And for instance, meditation on metta or loving kindness. If the practitioner is honest and sincere in that approach, I can tell you the results are guaranteed. The meditation on loving kindness. And now those who are looking for inner peace and happiness or in-depth analysis of life and existence, the language fails in most of the cases because the language is developed by people to describe a mind-driven story, to describe anything that is connected to knowledge. For anything, any explanation beyond this, language will not help. This is one reason why some spiritual gurus, spiritual teachers use pointers, examples, similes, or even metaphors to give a description. I'll give you one example. There's one spiritual teacher. He often uses the ocean being the self and the waves as life stories. There's another who cites the TV screen as the beingness, while the characters are shown in the movie are the life stories. There is another one who says, thoughts are tourists and I am not a hotel. You see? Now I go even simpler forms with questions like, who are you? Or who am I? A simple question that one needs to find out by being conscious of your thoughts, sensations, emotions, and so on. So this is what I was trying to explain, because sometimes the language helps, sometimes it helps in a different way for you to see the true nature of life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vipula, for that value-adding answer yet again. And with that, I would like to move into Mr. Kushal Gunasekara with the next question. Kushal, you spoke about the life of an individual, of general public in total, like the life balance and everything. How can a person stay away from trouble?
Yes. Thank you very much for that question. I think one of the key aspects of my way of looking at that is to inculcate fear and shame. If you have fear and shame, I think you can stay away from trouble to a very, very large extent. But at the same time, you got to inculcate or inherit great qualities like being generous, kind, nice, compassionate, humble, love and care, so many areas like that, truthfulness, integrity, I said, unselfishness, all of that. So if you look at those areas and build on your values, you know what is right from wrong. Intelligence is one thing, wisdom is another. So a key component of wisdom is actually fear and shame. So if you actually work on fear and shame, I think you definitely can stay out of trouble.
Thank you so much. And along with that, I would like to ask the next question also from you, Kushil, regarding now you spoke about how life can be meaningful, right? But I want you to elaborate a bit more for a person who is new to spirituality, who is new to practice all this mindfulness and the meditation. How can a person change their life to be more meaningful?
I think one of the things, as I said before, is self-assessment first. You got to self-discipline yourself. So you got to look at where you are today or yesterday or tomorrow. I mean, tomorrow, I don't know, it's yet to come, but you have to live in the present moment. So every day, what I would do is that I would go sit in silence, in my shrine room, and I would, look at inwardly and see what I did that particular day, and whatever I did that day, and if it was something really good, I would actually build on it and do more of what I have been doing good. But if there are instances where, I could have improved, I made a mistake, I would work on eliminating that. So it's also like a meditative kind of reflection that you undertake to improve yourself constantly. But there are other things that are so important, like giving back to the community is such a blissful engagement, because you're then showing signs of being unselfish, generous, and also caring and sharing, which are two very important, again, attributes that each of our characters must definitely, inherit. And as I said before, real happiness arises from helping others in need. So these are meaningful ways in which somebody can actually add productivity, or at the end of your life, you really want to be happy, right? Education, as I said, alone may not give you that happiness, because we are going to get old someday, and and I have seen people say that when you leave this world, you can't take anything with you. which is known by everyone. But my worry is that even before you leave this world, it's like as if you have taken nothing, because sometimes when you have Alzheimer's or dementia, you just don't know even the people around you. So that is so dangerous in one's life. So you got to be very focused. I mean, I'm not saying any one of us still can get dementia, but to be aware of that when you come into the world, you didn't want anything and you came, without anything. When you're leaving this world, also whatever that you build on, you're not going to take it away. So within that period, you have to live a very meaningful, noble, wholesome life.
Mhm. Thank you so much. I think we are getting so many messages from you to take home today. Like you mentioned, we are born with nothing and we die without anything. So in this period, the way individuals seek for happiness is, it varies from one to another. But nobody will be satisfied. Like you said, expect less for a peaceful mind. And for the ones who are watching us right now, I hope you're taking away so many messages from today's webinar, where we are covering most of it about being mindful about your life. And like Mr. Kushal said, it's all about self-discipline. Along with that, I would now like to move into Deepal again. Like I mentioned, I will come back to you regarding the focus of an individual. The most common question we hear when speaking about meditation is that the inability to stay focused or to be single-minded. What is your response to this, Deepak?
I think that's a very common question. And first is, the moment you have the expectation for your mind to be still, already you have created the problem, right? You sit to watch the mind as it is. If the mind is wandering, just observe and become aware. Because this whole thing is, if you try, the moment the trying happens, you're fighting against nature. And there are two types of concentration. One, sometimes you engrossed in something and you are lost, isn't it? Sometimes you're watching a very interesting movie or a match, a sports event. You don't know, the time goes by. Right? That's one way of concentration. That's very easy. That is external. But what happens is, when you start looking inward, then of course it's not as exciting as outside initially. So therefore it is natural for the mind to find something more interesting, because our entire conditioning is to look, to experience things outside. For example, eyes always want to see things outside. Sound is outside. Taste has to come in. The smell has to come in. The sensations are out. So then everything else is trained to look outside. So it's natural, this mind which has been constantly looking out, putting its tentacles to experience the world, and suddenly you are saying, go watch your breath, go think about a positive thought, go repeat a mantra. So then what happens is, your mind goes back to the traditional groove. So first step is accept that's the nature and keep watching. Don't add more energy onto it. The moment you stop fighting, there comes a moment of stillness. Stillness happens when the right conditions created. Right? A famous example is, you have a glass of water in your hand, and if you try to hold it very tight, it doesn't mean that your water will be quiet. But if you keep it on the ground, leave it for some time, then it will be silent. So best thing is, watch but don't interfere.
Thank you so much, Mr. Deepal, for explaining the instructions in a very simpler format where everybody could understand and start following it from today onwards after this webinar. And with that, I would like to go into Dr. Vipula again. You spoke about how Sri Lanka is rich with nature and facilities for all of these mindfulness activities, how tourists come into Sri Lanka to practice spirituality. I would like to ask the question, if a tourist come to Sri Lanka in seek of these spirituality, meditation, and mindfulness activities? Do we have enough facilities in Sri Lanka, and what are they?
Yes. Now, if I may say that what Sri Lanka has preserved in terms of this, what one how one can benefit from the Buddhist philosophy, um, without any hesitation, we could say the biggest attraction we have in Sri Lanka is this philosophy from which the visitors can benefit. Somehow, this has been overlooked for many years, but as you know, Sri Lanka is a diverse country. We have a huge diversity from the beaches to mountains to wildlife, ancient cities, you name it. So somehow it was overlooked for some time, but in the last 5 years or so, especially the ones who are engaged in the tourism industry, they were paying attention to this area and offering uh, meditation for the visitors as an optional program. And as I said at the beginning, uh, there is this notion people think, the moment you hear the word meditation, you think you need to go into some isolated area and sit in a posture and then start focusing, concentrating. That's the idea you get. But these one of the reasons why I wanted to work on this project, because all you need is a quiet place and some comfortable sitting, which means that we have now discovered that this meditation can be offered in all the tourism locations, hotels, guest houses, rest houses, boutique hotels, luxury hotels, because it's a whole thing. So now that I have done this, and there are a lot of people who are conducting it, I see that meditation from the Buddhist philosophy is going to take a pride of place in the future, especially in the post-COVID period.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vipula. And as you covered the Buddhist philosophy part, I would like to move into Mr. Depal as well on this question. Now, mindfulness meditation is a core Buddhist meditation. But can this be learned and practiced by others without conflicting with their beliefs?
Uh, that's a very pertinent question, Ashi. Yes, it is a core Buddhist teaching, but I gave a sample experience at the beginning, and then it has nothing to do with your belief system. That's the beauty of this. And I have been taking part in interreligious dialogue for 30 years in my life, living with all major religions in deeply practicing spiritual aspects. And I can say it doesn't come in conflict with any of your personal beliefs. Because what we are training to look at, it's a development of your mind. You are training your mind to become aware of the present moment. The present moment reality has no color, no label. If you learn to direct experience that, it doesn't conflict with any of your beliefs. So therefore, this is universal in that sense. So it has absolutely no belief system that is needed. And I have seen, as Doctor said, many people from different faiths and different parts of the world, and they come here and learn this meditation. Like, for example, I used to go to Milambe every year those days when I'm full-time working, and we had people from all faiths come and sit in silence, because in silence there are no barriers, there are no labels. It is when talking and doing we create barriers.
Thank you so much, Mr. Depal. And let me remind the guests who have joined the webinar right now, you can ask your questions. And from the questions I have got now, let me pick and choose and direct the questions to the relevant panelists. We have a question directing to Mr. Kujir. We have a guest asking, these days, people love wearing many masks rather than living as per their authenticity. If you're being surrounded by those people, how to overcome to become the real human being?
Yeah, I mean it's a tough question, but um, all, all I can say is that that's a discipline factor where people have to consciously ensure wearing masks. So I work with a lot of rural communities, and sometimes they do wear the mask, sometimes they don't, and it's become a huge issue interacting with people as well, because they can't actually figure you out who you are, when you walk into a place. So invariably, you have to lower the face mask to make sure that you're at least seen once. So I really didn't hear the question properly, but
Do you
yeah,
want me to repeat it, Mr. Kushal? Let me repeat it.
yes, please, yeah.
These days, people love wearing many masks rather than living as per their authenticity. If you're being surrounded by those people, how to overcome to become the real human being? Basically, people are covering their originality from face mask, is what I am taking from this.
Well, I think you didn't have to wear a mask to cover your originality. There have been many instances in human life that
Yeah,
people try to lead an artificial life even without a mask. So,
exactly.
so basically, whether you wear the mask or not, it depends on how pure your heart is. If your heart is good, it reflects on your face. So I don't think wearing a mask, you can try to undermine who you are. You have to live with your conscience. So you should know exactly what you're doing, who you are. You adapt to the situation. Change is inevitable. So you embrace change, but not let go of your values.
That is a very validating answer. We are getting, like you mentioned, you do not have to have a global pandemic to wear a mask. I think we are surrounded by a lot of people who wear unseen masks. And what I am taking away from what Mr. Kushal is saying is probably you smile instead of wearing a mask. Wear a smile than a mask, right, Mr.
Yeah,
Kushal?
but it's a bit tough these days. So you got to follow protocol, and I think you have to safeguard other people as well as yourself. So, but I've seen some new masks that are in circulation worldwide, where they have a translucent, transparent, section of your mouth and the nose, so that you can be probably identified. We in the rural sector, we have got some ladies to do some face masks for distribution in the communities that we work in. In fact, I want to show you the mask that we actually designed ourselves. It's all about good values. I don't know, you can see.
Yes, yes, you can be seen.
So that also helps us to create awareness, how to be good, extend kindness, be a good person, truthfulness. So we branded all those good values, in our mask, so that when we go, we carry a brand that others can see.
Thank you so much. And I think we have time to take one more question. I would like to direct this to Mr. Depal. We have a person asking. I think we covered this session throughout today's webinar, but let's take this question in brief, where a person is asking, is there a difference between happiness and inner peace? We have Abdul Alim from Brilliance Holidays and Events asking this question. So let's give a brief answer since we have already covered it. Deepak?
When you have inner peace, you are happy. When you are happy, you will obviously have inner peace. Happiness that's arising out of no expectations, that's the beautiful happiness that will give you inner peace. So if you look for happiness and want to achieve happiness, you will miss it. Best is no expectations, but live the moment fully, as if this is the only moment you have. You will be happy along the way. don't think uh, we have this peak which is known called Sripada or Adam's Peak in English, and it's a beautiful peak because all people from all religions believe it is a sacred place. Now the beauty is the Buddhists have only two stanzas or two verses to worship the footprint of Buddha, but have over 600 four-line verses they sing along when they're climbing the Sripada. So what does that mean? That means journey is more important probably than the destination. So if you learn to enjoy the journey, you will have inner peace and happiness.
Thank you so much, Mr. Depal. And I think we have come to the final segment of today's session. And on a final note, I would like to take the input of all three of you. Now, why we had this webinar today is to say that traveling, the tourism, goes along with meditation, spirituality, and that Sri Lanka can be a hotspot for this purpose. What are your thoughts? Let's start with Dr. Vipula. Will you be able to share your thoughts on conducting this? Okay, let's begin with Mr. Kushil. Shall we? Since Dr. Vipula is, yes. Right,
Yeah.
Mr. Kushil, let's share your thoughts on this webinar and this promotion of tourism and meditation, spirituality, all of this together. What are your thoughts?
I'm not sure when the travel will open. There are so many things said about this, return back to travel and coming to countries outside theirs. But one of the things that change has done is actually to stay in touch with the others outside the world through Zoom or whatever method that we have come up with. So all I'm saying is that it's very important as a lesson to learn that you never know when disaster is going to strike. So like how COVID-19 changed the game plan completely for everyone across the world. So we've got to learn, and as I said, embrace change. The more you resist change, the more difficult it's going to be. So it taught us hugely invaluable lessons that, whether it's self-assessment or whether, how we can improve ourselves constantly. I think whatever happens, meditative reflection for inner peace, like Deepal said, is so very important, because if you inculcate inner peace, then your levels of happiness, or may I say the individual gross happiness, will go up and enhance once you, because everybody wants to be happy at the end, right? They don't want to lead miserable lives. So you have to understand exactly the way forward and the technique of enhancing your own individual gross happiness. So I think on behalf of Itkin Spence and all of Sri Lanka, we would like to one day, sooner than later, invite all those who are looking for inner peace and happiness through meditative reflection to come to Sri Lanka to experience bliss like no other, which is more thrilling than anything else.
With that warm invitation to everyone who's looking forward to coming to Sri Lanka, I would like to move into Dr. Vipula on this note. What are your thoughts about this webinar and this concept of bringing along tourism and meditation? Dr. Vipula?
Yes, as I said before, there is, I wouldn't call it a lesson. The COVID, as Kushil said, has changed the game plan. In an environment, this is right across the world where I suppose the corporate world had measured performance of everyone in terms of profits, money, expansion, development, and so on. So one thing that COVID has taught us is that there's something else, that is your inner peace. which is immeasurable in terms of the happiness that we are talking here. So I suppose it's a great step by Aitken Spence to embark on this webinar session, which will also enable us, people like us who are into this spirituality and who are offering this service to our visitors, to communicate this message so that when the doors are open, when the airports are open, the travel behaviors will be different in the future, and people will be cautious in places, and they will also would like to indulge themselves in these activities like connected to spirituality, and therefore a program of this nature will be certainly helpful for the people who are looking forward to visit Sri Lanka in the future.
Thank you so much. Such programs can really help the audience, the locals as well as foreigners who are looking forward to travel around the country. Along with that, on a final note, Mr. Deepal, what have you got to say about this webinar and on such concept of bringing along tourism and meditation?
When people come to Sri Lanka, they ask, did you go in a tuk-tuk? Did you try hoppers? Did you try kottu? And did you try tea? I think we should get them to try a little bit of meditation. Actually, travel itself not only helps you discover outside. As a person who has traveled a lot, what eventually happens is you discover yourself. I think that's the beauty of travel. So when you go to a different place, you begin to see things. Sometimes you realize you begin to see things from your own perspective. Comparisons happen and things like that. So I think to every tourist experience, if they can have at least a little bit of meditation, that will give them a different perspective of coming to Sri Lanka, which is absolutely unique in many ways. And this is perhaps one of the most important aspects of Sri Lanka that one needs to taste. And as I said before, journey itself is worth to be happy. So I hope we can welcome many visitors to Sri Lanka and let them experience this inner peace while discovering themselves and Sri Lanka, of course.
Thank you so much, Mr. Deepal. And on that note, I would like to summarize today's webinar on the note of Mr. Deepal Surachi spoke about with his corporate experience, he brought the mindfulness, like how important the meditation is. And he told we are creating our own movie. And if we are under stress, that is, we are creating a horror movie. And it's high time to stop the horror movie and create your own beautiful movie for life. And then we moved on to Dr. Vipula, who spoke about the tourism and meditation, the importance of the combination, and how spirituality gets along with travelers and how it can help to uplift the tourism in Sri Lanka. And also, he touched upon the importance of Buddhist philosophy. Moving into the final segment, Mr. Kushal touched on with his experience of uplifting a whole village which was disrupted due to the tsunami in 2004. With the humanitarian experience, he spoke about how mind makeup is important, that the beauty makeup and self-discipline is the key for inner peace. In summarizing all of that, I would like to thank all the panelists who joined the webinar today. Thank you so much, Mr. Deepal Surarachi, Dr. Vipula, and Mr. Kushal. Thank you so much for joining and making this session a success today. On that note, I would also like to tell the viewers, thank you so much for joining. I hope you got the best out of this program of inner peace and happiness through meditation experience Sri Lanka. And I would like to make an announcement on behalf of Aitken Spence Travels, who organized this wonderful session today. Aitken Spence Travels is operating local tours to the local market and offering unique tours at the moment, since their travel operations are not yet open. So it's open to the locals. These are now picking up, and we would like to invite all of you who are interested to join us in some of the exciting tours, such as off-season Adams Peak hike, Singharaj tours, photography tours, and going back to our roads tours with the Vedda community. So these are some of the excursions which have been organized in line with the Aitken Spence Travels plan. So join with them talk to the travel experts of 18 Spence Travels, and they will be happy to assist you in making your travel dreams all come true. Along that note, just like Mr. Deepal mentioned, beauty of travel is that you discover yourself. And in discovering yourself with inner peace is more important. So why not meditation? Next time, as locals, when we meet a foreigner, just like we asked, did you try our kotu? Did you try our plain tea? Have you gone in the tuk-tuk? With all of these, let's also ask the question, have you tried our meditation? Have you gone to the nature? Have you experienced the spirituality coming from the Buddhist philosophy? So these are things we as locals also have to keep in mind. On that high note, I would like to mark the end of this session today on inner peace and happiness through meditation experience Sri Lanka. My name is Ashin Sunivir. Thank you for being in this wonderful session. Have a good night.
Good night. Thank you. I will.